Hello and welcome to Property Roundup on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we chat to industry experts to get a view on new trends emerging. This show is brought to you in partnership with the Property District, changing the narrative of the industry. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Alicia Greene, a flexible offices consultant with Knight Frank. Alicia, thank you so much. I'm delighted that you're in a position to join us today because flexible offices is definitely the hot topic of the sector today. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you so much for having us, Carol. It'll be great to chat about the sector and everything that's going on.
Well, it's particularly relevant. I can't remember a time when we've had as many office and commercial buildings references in the headlines and such contradictory commentary coming out. So it's a really good time for us to be chatting. So maybe let's take a step back and talk about the new department that you've set up within Knight Frank over the past year. You might just talk us a little bit around the work that you and your team are doing.
Yeah, so I would have joined the team here in Knight Frank last year, would have been around this time. So we set up the department. We're here kind of the 12-month juncture and obviously, building it from the ground up. I myself have a background in selling office space with startups where I was before. So I think definitely we've always been looking to kind of service that side of the market from somebody that's setting up their business on day one to, larger firms that are looking to grow and have that scalability, within an office space, within a provider, and to very much bring them along the process from day one and to be there at every single stage of their business journey.
It again, as I mentioned at the start, it's a particularly interesting time for office space, not just in Ireland, but globally. Just over the weekend and over the past week, we've been listening about, Ireland currently has the highest level of commercial vacancy as it's had for about the last decade. And a lot of that is offices. And obviously we're not just talking about vacancy, but then with the sustainability conversation, we're really veering into potential obsolescence, which is something that isn't maybe being discussed too much in the Irish marketplace, but certainly something that we're going to be looking at. But the current office vacancy rate appears to be it's continuing to rise. So you might just give us an overview of where you see the office marketplace at the moment and maybe where flex space then maybe fits into that.
Yeah, I think there has been a lot of, articles being written about, it seems every single week that there's something, being written in one publication versus another. I do think that the outlook, you can take whatever you read, it depends on, I can only say from our point of view, we've seen very strong requirements and occupiers coming to us. Now, whether that's looking at, I think the requirements might have changed, but that's being reflective. And I think a lot more clients are coming to us and being aware of the market and being aware of how much money, that they need for their teams. They are tailoring, I think the office will always have a space. It will always be relevant. I don't believe in the office is dead and all of those sort of articles. People will forever need that space that is synonymous with their business, that brings their teams together. And I think as well for the next era of talent, they need a space to call their business home. And it's where they're going to get, the next generation are going to have their formal training and they need to understand that this is what, working life is like. So I think more so the changes that we're seeing is the shift in occupiers' demand and also how they are changing the ways in which they work. So I think flex, fits into that perfectly because it gives all the occupiers the opportunity to say, listen, this is where you want to be now. This is where you want to be in 18 months. And you can very much business plan with them. And all of the providers that we work with, very much from day one, when we speak with them, we're going out with the requirement. They'll say, where are they at today in terms of headcount? Are they going out fundraising? Do they plan on being, expanding? Are they looking for an acquisition? And with that, how can we grow with them as a provider? The retention is a huge thing as well. And every single, provider we work with wants clients to grow within their portfolio, whether they have one building or 16 buildings, and, is that worldwide? Is it countrywide in Ireland? So I think we are seeing a lot more people and as well, change in the shift of the clients that are going to be coming into flex as well. We're seeing a lot more professional services. We're seeing term lengths being signed for, in excess of 24 months, whereas before it might have been 12. We are seeing other people in terms of the managed solution that are signing anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So, the sector is maturing. It obviously isn't as mature as other markets, but I think definitely Dublin is becoming more so on the map for foreign firms, but also I think we're going to see, even in the funding rounds, a lot of the Irish firms are going to be the ones to really come out on top. And with that, they're going to be the big name occupiers. The tech ones, dominated for so long, but I think the homegrown Irish companies that are funding and growing here will be the next big occupiers in the market.
That's a really interesting perspective. And I love the business model of almost becoming the journey partner for businesses. So from startups, and this possibly is coming from your background working with startups and helping them to get space. But from a traditional agency point of view, it's quite unusual to be effectively shopping for solutions that aren't in-house in your own office department. So explain a little how that works.
So, and we'll give it as a business example. Somebody will come to us and say, listen, Ali, I'm looking for 20 to 40 desks, or it might even be now we're seeing more and more people are coming with the square foot. So even in that, the requirements are becoming more and more tailored, and the language being used is a lot more being stolen from, say, the traditional side of the market, if you will. So it'll be very much that they'll come down and say location. We will then go out to all the providers we work with. So we work with everybody from WeWork, Regis, Iconic, Glandor, Pembroke Hall, all the main operators in Ireland or who are working with at the moment. And we will say, this is our client, this is what they need, send us all the options. And then what we will do is we will tailor all those options to our client. We will then present them with the options with the hopes that they will create a shortlist. We go out to tour and we will sell them, the benefits of every single space based on their budget, based on the location. So we try and get them as close. I always call it the 3 wishes. If they had a genie and they came and said, exactly, find me this, you get as close to that as you can with all the other, determining factors. And then obviously, once they're happy with the space, we would then go back and broker the deal and say, this is the term, this is the price. And then these are the prospects of the growth of the company. So I think for us, our unique angle is that we very much get to know the clients that we work with. We're not just looking for, say, right now, we're also forward planning for where are you going to be, in 2 years' time. And then, that works both ways, whether they're doing extremely well and they've funded and they're growing, or, there is another side of the coin that, startups, have a very high failure rate, but at the same time, it peaks and troughs. So I think we saw a lot of that in the recession. And, that's probably the best thing about the flex market is that it is so agile. So you want to be there for the clients on every part of it. And really, I suppose you have to nurture those relationships, because what could be a 10 desk today could be 100 desks, within a year. So it's kind of really working on those relationships as well. And I suppose we pride ourselves on the service that we give our clients. It is very tailored, and, they're very reactive to us. They're very honest and they'll say, this doesn't work. What about this? Go back for this. So there is a lot more negotiation to it. It's not as simple as, just showing them a space and them signing a license agreement. There is a bit more of a collaboration.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely see this. And actually, to me, it looks like you're taking on the role of buyer's agent in the commercial space, which I think is really interesting, because obviously we do have that in Ireland, but it's slightly stunted. And the potential for growth in the sector is arguably stunted because we don't have a MLS system or the multiple listings, so we have limitations to what a buyer's agent can do in the residential market. But interestingly, a buyer's agent model could work much better in the commercial space. So it's really interesting to see you do this. I'm very curious on 2 fronts. First is around the culture and really what's a legacy from COVID-19 and the pandemic and how we've changed our behavior. First of all, let's start with the culture of people working remotely. We're already starting to see cracks in that. We're seeing employers say actually productivity has fallen. And, it's really interesting from our own perspective within Property District. We were operating remote working years before the pandemic, and it worked well. And then obviously we were wholly remote during COVID. And since then, we are finding problems with the remote working model to the point where we are in the process of multiplying the space we have in our Galway office. We're actually taking a space that's about 4 times larger, not just because the company is growing, but because we want the team in the office. And I did not envisage years ago when I was so proud of our remote working team. I didn't think that day would come. And in my experience, something shifted during COVID. So yes, more people working remotely, but something happened to the productivity and it has fallen. And I hear it from employers across the board. So can we just maybe take a moment to talk about the trends that you're not just kind of the providers of flex space, but say the companies that are going into those spaces. What are their attitudes towards remote working? Are they trying to facilitate remote working, or are they trying to encourage people into better office spaces more often?
I think it's, there are two sides of the market. You have, say, the occupiers that are coming to me and saying, we are completely operating, a 3-day mandatory, this is when our team will be in the office. And then we have other ones that say, listen, we want people to be in. We don't want to have the forced conversation, because I don't think that necessarily works on a human level. I think it has to be a very slow transition. So on that side, we are seeing people that are saying, we want a new office, but we want it to be a place that people want to come into, that it's not a chore. So, I think it's like everything in the market. People do they want bigger? Do they want better? Do they want shinier? I think we're seeing that people maybe have revised, in some sectors, have scaled down, but even within that, they want grade A space. They want it to be beautifully designed. They want collaboration space. So they want a lot more. So I think with that, and that is something that the market kind of has to very quickly react to. So I think, it's all to do with, I think in the flex sector, it no longer is seen as just having a desk and a chair. People want a community that they can be part of. They want space outside of their four walls where they can meet other people, that they have these like-minded communities, that they're meeting fellow entrepreneurs, that they're meeting contacts, and to be in a multi-tenanted building in flex, you have that. If you walk downstairs, you can say to the front of house team, and generally across the sector, they're very good at this, at knowing their client schedules. So clients will very much believe in them and believe in their recommendations if they're looking for legal representation, if they're looking for an accountant. Digital marketing is a huge other thing, and if they can find that in-house and have those synergies, that's what makes these buildings flourish and these communities thrive, is very much that then, you're feeding back into this community. Another thing, I suppose, is the wellness aspect. Are buildings providing that? Is there a wellness room? Is there an on-site gym? Is there collaboration spaces? Is there, podcast studios is a huge thing now. Lots of occupiers are looking at, because so many people are doing in-house content now. So that is another huge sell. I would say, for the other occupiers, one large floor plate, but they have everything self-contained. So they'll have their own sort of galley style kitchen. They'll have, open meeting rooms. Gone are the kind of executive offices. It's very much open plan. There's no fixed desks. So there's a lot of desk booking, programs that are now being, I suppose, sold to the market for people, to show that hybrid working policy. And, you could be sitting with somebody new today that you never met from your company. You might have joined it a year ago. So I think everything is becoming a bit more, I suppose, holistic. And then you have the other sides as well. If you don't want to hire an office manager, flex really works, because everything is there for you. If you want to have events, they'll be on site. If you want to, do team days, you have all your meeting rooms there, everything. So it's moving more to sort of, I've read a lot of pieces, Carol, about like the hotelification of the market. And that's definitely where it's going. You walk into some of our amazing buildings, yourself, you've been in a lot of them, the Iconics, the Grafters, these sort of locations. You walk in and sometimes you look and you go, this is actually amazing. It looks like a hotel. So I think that's also where people want to go. They want that very polished look, but they don't want to have to do the fit out. So they are availing of that.
It's interesting. You use the term hotelification, over the past number of years, it's really emerged from space as a service. But most recently, I've heard it referred to as almost an arms race for amenities, because actually people are competing on amenities. It's interesting to hear the increased requirements, but alongside increased requirements and people wanting better quality and more and more and more, is that they have to be willing to pay for it. And in the early days of certainly co-working or shared space, they were an affordable alternative. They were something that a business did on an interim basis, or while they waited to be able to invest in their own premises. Now we know that's a trend that has completely upended in recent years. So are people, whereas before co-working or shared space was not a premium. It was the other end of the market. It was the affordable. Now it is very much the premium. Are people and I suppose are companies willing to pay for that? Are they willing to pay for all of the other benefits and the holistic room and the events and everything on site? Is this something that they want to invest in?
Yeah, I think for them, the key thing, the amenities are great to have and things like that, but the core thing for them is the flexibility that they can't get necessarily in the traditional market. And that they feel like they can grow somewhere with a provider, and very much they're the driving force. It's very much 50-50. I need this much more space. What can you give me in your availability schedule? So I think that's probably the core thing that they know that they're paying for, and they really value that because they can't get that in other alternatives on the market. I think the other thing is as well, there's always this age-old sort of, I think that people love to write about is, flex serviced versus the traditional market. Is it necessary? I think there's this prejudice that it's seen as very expensive compared, but I suppose now we're seeing a rise in fit out costs, to have facilities, all your rates and all of those sort of overheads that you add when you're looking at a square foot cost, versus all those other things. I think they are becoming more and more in line. But definitely, there is a different aesthetic, there is a different design, but that's very much driven by the business model as well. So I think we're seeing, larger occupiers, dipping their toe into the market. We've got iPut doing their Making It Work solution, which has been hugely popular and it's done very, very well. Any clients we ever take in look at it and they really like, because it's bridging a gap between the flex service and the traditional. And I think, we're going to see more occupiers entering the market on the back of that because of the performance being so strong. And those slightly bigger occupiers or professional services want to go into that.
Alicia, what surprised you the most over the past 12 months as you were setting up the department and speaking to people? Because it is a new offering, it's a new way to approach this, and it's a really changing, shifting, evolving marketplace. What has surprised you the most over the last year?
I think, the market has changed even so much in 12 months from when I joined. I think the big thing is I suppose for, even foreign firms that we've spoken to that are, have footprints in other jurisdictions and bigger markets, come to Ireland and they're very interested in it. They love the location, they love the buildings. I think it sometimes is harder to enter the market, but that's, based on landlord expectations and things like that, which is changing now. And I think a lot more people want to incorporate a small percentage of flex into their portfolios, which is great to see. We're seeing a lot more interest in that. So, and then we also have new people coming onto the market. The likes of Sunbrook are going to be launching in September. They're going to be a new provider. 5 beautiful Georgian houses with a very elevated product. So, the test fits are there. The data shows that it is proving very well. Across the market, we have about 87% occupancy across the building, so across locations. So it is very strong. All the data signals towards it. And I think I've been more surprised of the amount of people looking to come into flex as sort of swing space. They're waiting for buildings to come on stream in the traditional market in 25, 26. We've worked with a couple of big name clients, enterprise level, that are going into flex, signing contracts for 2+ years. And then we know that they're going to make the transition to the other side of the market, which for us is great because it complements that we can service them on my side, but we can also put them over to tenant rep or to traditional offices on the landlord side. So for us, it's been incredible that we can very much build on that complementary service, that we can do it here, and that very much the clients that we meet with myself can definitely migrate and transition and graduate into the traditional market, which is what we want to see. We don't want the two to be in competition with one another. We want them to be complementary.
Well, not only that, but obviously if you're meeting people several years before they go into what will essentially become their permanent commercial address, that actually you're getting to learn a lot about them. You're getting to work with them to shape their requirements, as opposed to a company coming to you from scratch looking to do that when you don't have that relationship built up. So I can see how that would actually give the Knight Frank office team a real advantage then, actually, when we're looking at the pipeline of office space that's going to be filled over the next 2 to 3 years. Again, it's just a particularly interesting space. I'm always curious about startups, because I think startups are where people don't understand how to use offices, essentially, because they're startups. They've never had to do it before. They also don't necessarily have a good handle on what their needs will be, not just today, but in terms of, you talk about scaling up for successful startups, and indeed the high rate of failure. And both of those things can happen very quickly, that it can be unpredictable which direction it's going to go. So actually, for startups coming into the marketplace, how are they approaching the office conversation? Are they more likely to not want to accommodate their full team all of the time?
I think it depends. It very much is, from my background, I think it really depends on the founder. How are they, not towing the line, but I suppose setting out the expectations of how they want to work. So if you're an early stage business, yourself, Carol, when you're setting up a firm, you want your people to be there. You want everybody to bounce off one another. You want that idea creation and collaboration to be there. So very much, I think it has to be driven from, the top down. And if you create that air and you create that culture of, listen, we're all here, we're all creating something together, and you have that buy-in, we see a lot of the startup clients that we work with that say, yeah, our team are in 4 days, 4 out of 5 days a week. They want 24-hour access, because they know that they have an investment in building something in the early stage, as much as when it gets to the scale-up stage. If you're raising a certain amount of money, as we have a very buoyant funding landscape in Ireland through Enterprise Ireland, through the IGA, through the funds, the likes of Elkstone, ACT, all of those sort of things. We have a very active market. We have a very strong pipeline of clients that are coming through. So I think for them, they want to build their teams here. That's why they have located here. But also at the same time, they know that the people that they are hiring are people that will complement the team. So very much everybody has a role to play. So I think it definitely comes from there. I think, if you have a lovely office for people to come into and work from, that's another great element to it. But I think as well, generally, when you meet them, they're so quick on, that's why they come to people like us, is because they don't want to go around and go on Daft and go through 10 websites. They want to just come to somebody like myself and say, Ali, this is exactly what I need, where I need it. You go to the market, and they know that it's taken care of. We do all the heavy lifting for them, and we very much, I would say there is a certain amount of hand holding throughout the journey, but then there's also, the celebration that they know that we have showed them absolutely everything on the market. We are impartial. We just want to get them the space that they can, that ticks all of their boxes, that it's the right term length for them, but also a space that we know that they can grow from, or in time, if they need to translate to another part of the market, that we're top of mind because they've had a great consumer experience with us. So I think that is the other side of it, of why they definitely come to agents like ourselves to do it.
Very good. And look, it makes absolute sense. It's back to this almost buyer's agent model, and then you're starting a relationship that can continue as the company grows and scales, which absolutely makes sense. And I suppose before we finish up today, because you have the advantage of being able to go into a lot of these offerings, it's been a while since I toured some of the flex space, and I know I haven't been into the last 2 or 3 that have opened. Tell me, what is the most impressive thing you've seen walking in? Because the level of fit out has improved and increased. And I mean, it's really, there's been a leveling up exercise happening across flex space providers. And I'm going to give Iconic Offices the shout out here for really raising the game. But then it makes others, it gives the others a bar to rise up to. So from your experience going in and out of all of the offerings, what's the most impressive feature you've seen in any of these providers?
Well, I think it's so varied. We get to see, you kind of walk in and you see one, style, and you very much know you could walk into a building, say a WeWork is very differently designed to how an Iconic is, and then it depends. Is it, is it a new building? Is it a Georgian? Even no Georgian is the same. We're seeing now a lot more Georgians being knocked into 2 that are shared, that are no longer kind of one room, and then, they're being knocked into big open plan spaces, which is what the market now wants. So I think, we're seeing a lot of great stuff come to the market. I think we're going to see, Grafter has definitely come in on the back of Iconic. They're opening up their new building, Smith House on Stephen's Green, which was the old Top Shop. So, and even then, that's going to provide something very different because there's going to be retail on the bottom, workspace on the other floor. So that's something new to the market that we haven't seen anywhere else. The likes of, say, like you said, they're iconic, have so many different locations. Each building has its own personality and are, nearly the heroine in the Office story and things like that. But then you have the likes of, say, Pembroke Hall. They've been in the market for 20 years. They have so many buildings. They have Georgians, they have new buildings that they launched Hennebeek Studios. You've got Glandor with the Bottle Works, which is completely different. You've got a lot of people that have been in the business for a very long time and have retained a lot of clients, which is amazing. And then you have new entrants that are bringing something new. So I think with every building, you see something that's very cool and very bespoke and very unique that you go, that looks really good. And certain occupiers will want that. And then that a lot of the providers themselves, go and look at other buildings and they see what they like and what they want to bring in a new building and things like that, or if they're going to retrofit. Because the market is so competitive now that you have to be constantly evolving. It's like having a hotel. You need to do 20% every year because people will look and they have a very keen eye now. So I think even people are going from one provider to another just for change. It could be that they can't be accommodated where they are, and they look at what they know and they look at what they would like. So it's interesting to see people's shifts, and what they want from one provider to the next is very, very different. But I think definitely, the quality of the spaces in the common areas, even with the offices themselves, that it doesn't matter where you go within the building, that everything is maintained. I think the front of house teams, community teams are really strong as well because they get to know the clients. They know where they are in their journey. They know all of their staff. So I think that adds another level of comfort, and service is a huge part of it, Carol. The people that are really looking after their clients are going to be the ones that will dominate in this industry, no matter what their building looks like, because at the end of the day, it's all human connection.
It's amazing that it does come back to great service. And at the end of the day, real estate has always been a service-based industry and continues to be that. So actually, that's a really timely reminder. So thank you so much for that. And I suppose finally, let's help the flex space providers here by, you have insight because you get to talk to the users about what they want. You get to walk them around where they get to compare all of these genuinely world-class offerings. So you obviously get a sense of what is a priority for businesses. So let's help the flex space providers today by saying, in the last 12 months, what are the trends you're seeing emerging that are not just nice to haves, but what are the priorities for occupiers now going into flex space?
I would say on the larger size, we're seeing a lot more requirements of, in excess of 1,500 square foot. We're seeing a lot more for anywhere from 2.5 to 4,000 square foot. We're seeing, and with that, they're saying, show me something in the flex managed sector, but also show me it in the traditional market, because those smaller sizes sometimes are hard to service, or the term length mightn't be, achievable for these clients that we meet. So I think definitely saying, we feed back all the time to the clients. They'll ring us and they'll say, what else are they looking at? And within reason, certain clients, we cannot disclose that information because obviously privacy, we really value that on our clients' behalf. But I suppose there's general feedback that you could say, that they thought you needed more, phone booths because they're not going to build an internal meeting room, and they've seen that in other buildings. Is that something that you guys have down the line, or have you got an office that's been hard to let that you could turn into a space like that? If it's all open plan, offices, sometimes that's very hard to achieve in a Georgian. They don't want to have, say, a whole floor and have 4 or 5 offices. The other thing is disability access is huge. We're seeing that for a lot more of the multinationals, that they have that built in. ESG policies, that's another thing, but we're probably a bit behind on that, but I think great efforts are being made in the Irish market to really bring that up to standard. So that's a bit of a longer journey. It's nice to have, but I think we're going to see more and more, clients coming to us asking about ESG policies, disability access and things like that. That is a huge thing, which is very hard to do in the likes of the Georgian buildings. But I think, open plan, floor plate, lots of collaboration zones within a suite. And if any occupiers can offer that, to one tenant, they will more than likely achieve a term of, 3+ years, more so probably 5. So we are seeing that definitely, from every part of the market, everything is changing, from the smaller occupiers, what they want in terms of facilities, to the larger ones that are saying, listen, this is where we want to be. We want to find a home for 5 years. This is exactly what we want. Go out and find it. Which sometimes is difficult, and you have to manage everybody's expectations and say, we will show you absolutely everything on the market. It mightn't be within your price range, but we want to show you. I always like to give them an A, B, and a C version. So A is absolutely, everything that you could have, no budget as an issue. This is the top of the market. So you can say, listen, you mightn't be here now, but this is where you could be in 3 years. And if somebody has a lease expiry, we know then that's where you want to be. And we can have those conversations and earmark things that are even coming, off market, which we are seeing a lot more now of as well. The B option is probably, very close to their budget, and exactly, they might have to make a bit of a compromise. And then the C is, listen, this is what we can give you at the moment. This is based on, the term that you want or the budget that you have. But listen, there are conversations to be had. I don't think necessarily this is the list price and that's it. All of the providers at the moment are open to conversations, but it needs to be mutually beneficial for both. So yeah, I think there's a lot more negotiation that goes into it than probably a lot of people think on the flax. I think people think you walk in, you sign a license agreement, and that's it. No longer is that the case. There is a bit more chasing, but I suppose that's what makes it so rewarding for us, that when we work with our clients, they know that we've been with them every part of the journey. And sometimes, you'll have a call with the provider and the client, and sometimes they won't feel comfortable saying certain things. And we have to go back and not play Mr. Bad Guy, but we have to have the honest conversation, because they know that we can do that because we have those relationships, with the providers and things like that. So yeah, I would say that's probably another part of it.
I think it's a really interesting approach to this. Before we came on air, I was sharing with you that there was an interesting piece in the Seattle Times this morning, and it was calling the return to office the $1.3 trillion problem that few have figured out. And that's because it doesn't come down to buildings. It doesn't really come down to real estate. It comes down to user behavior and companies' behavior. And I think that's the unknown quantity here. So I think that while as humanity we figure out where we want to be spending our time, I think it's a really interesting interim model that you've built there. And I think there's no doubt that it would add massive value to companies who are looking at the flex space offerings and maybe struggling to decipher the difference between them and to differentiate between them. I think it's a fantastic solution. So I'm genuinely thankful that you took the time today to talk us through it, and best of luck to yourself and the team. I know you're only a year with the new department, but definitely hit the ground running. So absolutely best of luck to yourself and the team there at Knight Frank over the next year and the years to follow. That was Alicia Greene, Flexible Offices Consultant with Knight Frank. You're very welcome, Alicia. And that's all we've time for today. My thanks to Katie Tallon and the production team at Hear Me Roar Media. And also thanks to our show producer, Property District, changing the narrative of the industry. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out all of the other real estate and construction shows on iPropertyRadio. And thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Property Roundup on iPropertyRadio.